All right, welcome back, everyone. We are diving deep today into David Miller and his, let's call them passionate comments about the ICC after South Africa got knocked out of the Champions Trophy.
Yeah, interesting, right? On the surface, it just seems like he's upset about losing to New Zealand in the semifinals. Like, sour grapes.
Yeah, but there's definitely something more going on here, right?
Yeah, and it's especially interesting, I think, because Miller, he had an incredible tournament, like record-breaking performance.
Right.
And he still comes out swinging at the ICC.
Yeah.
Basically saying their scheduling is messed up.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, is the ICC more focused on making the tournament exciting for viewers, or are they actually thinking about the players, their well-being?
Right, exactly. And this isn't just about like one game. This could impact these guys' careers, even how well the game is played overall. So let's go back a bit and try to see things from Miller's perspective. Okay, so after the group stages wrapped up, both South Africa and Australia had to hop on a plane to Dubai. And the reason? India's semifinal opponent wasn't decided yet.
Okay.
So then India wins, and what happens? South Africa has to fly all the way back to Pakistan for their semifinal. Meanwhile, Australia, they're chilling in Dubai the whole time.
Yeah, that's rough. But it wasn't like a super long flight.
True. But think about it. You just played a super intense match, and then you got to travel early the next morning. Not much time to recover,
Yeah, even if you're like a top athlete, that stuff can mess with you.
Totally. And Miller actually said it doesn't make it nice. It's almost like you can hear the fatigue in his voice,
For sure. And that exhaustion can really hurt your performance.
Yeah.
You need sleep to recover, to think clearly, especially in a huge tournament like this.
And that's what makes Miller's performance even more insane.
Right.
Dude goes through all this travel chaos, and then he slams a century in just 67 balls.
Wow.
Fastest century in Champions Trophy history. He smashed a record that stood for like 23 years.
Yeah. Talk about mental strength, right?
Yeah.
And don't forget, this is his second century in a knockout stage of an ICC event.
Wow. Really puts things in perspective. This guy doesn't crack under pressure. So, okay, he plays amazingly despite all the craziness. Does this make his criticism of the schedule even stronger?
It definitely makes you think, right? I mean, if he can do all this while being exhausted, imagine what he could do with proper rest. It makes you wonder, is the ICC really doing everything they can to help these players?
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones putting on this tournament,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, are they putting viewership and like the money they're making ahead of the players? Because without the players, there is no tournament. Right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a tough one. I mean, you got to think about it from their side, too. It's like a massive job to put this whole thing together. All these teams, different places, TV schedules. It's got to be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But still, I mean, is there like a better way? Could they change the format to, cut down on the travel but still keep it exciting?
Maybe they could use fewer places to play the games. Group them together so teams aren't flying all over the place.
Right, exactly. Or maybe even change the knockout stage. Maybe a round robin where you play everyone and that way, the schedule's more flexible.
Those are some interesting ideas, but would it work, Would the TV people and the sponsors be okay with such big changes?
That's where, like, the ICC, they need to step up and be leaders, They got to think about the players, but also, like, the long-term health of the sport. If they just focus on the money right now, it could really hurt things later on.
Right. You're talking about like players getting burnt out, right? I mean, pushing them too hard leads to injuries, shorter careers, and then, the quality of the game drops.
Exactly. And that's bad for everyone. The fans, the TV people, the sponsors, all want to see the best players playing their best.
So basically, the ICC needs to take Miller seriously, right? They got to find a way to make things better for the players, but keep the tournament fun to watch.
Totally. It might mean having some tough conversations, but in the end, it's about what's best for cricket.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about Miller's century. I mean, the power, the strategy, he was unbelievable, especially with all the pressure.
Oh, yeah. He came in when South Africa really needed him and just took over the game.
Yeah.
I mean, he was scoring so fast, but it wasn't just hitting blindly. He was picking his shots, finding the gaps, really smart stuff.
Yeah, he made it look easy. Almost like he was just playing with his friends, not in a World Cup semifinal.
And remember, this is after all that travel, It just shows you how strong he is mentally.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the most memorable innings in Champions Trophy history. But unfortunately for South Africa, it wasn't enough to win.
Which brings us back to the bigger issue. Did all that travel really hurt them? We can't know for sure, but it's something to think about.
It definitely shows that even, like, amazing individual performances can only take you so far. Cricket's a team sport. Everyone needs to be at their best.
Absolutely. And if the ICC isn't making things fair for everyone, then it's not really a fair competition, is it?
Right. This whole thing also makes you think about the role of players speaking up, advocating for themselves.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Guys like Miller, they need to speak out. They shine a light on problems that people might not notice otherwise.
And it's interesting because in other sports, like the player unions, they have a lot of power when it comes to schedules and, working conditions.
Yeah, like in football, basketball, baseball, even tennis. They know they need to protect themselves, so they get together and fight for it.
So is that happening in cricket? Are players starting to push back against these crazy schedules?
It's definitely growing. You see more and more players talking about it, and there are groups like FICA, the Federation of International Cricketers Associations. They're working to represent the players.
It's good to hear. It seems like it's not just individual complaints anymore. It's more of a group effort to fix these bigger problems.
Exactly. And that's what
Okay.
they need. One player speaking up is good, but when they all speak together, it's much louder, and it gives them more power to change things.
So it's about finding the right balance, right? The ICC can't just ignore the money, but they can't ignore the players either.
Right. It's tough, but they got to find a way for the sport to keep growing without destroying the players.
Yeah. I mean, Miller being willing to talk about this, even after such a huge game, shows how much this matters to the players. It's not just about him, it's about the future of cricket.
Exactly. And it reminds us that, winning is important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of the players' health and well-being.
It's interesting, right? Because you see this in other pro sports. Like, the player unions have a lot of power when it comes to, it's just like the schedule, and working conditions, all that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like football, basketball, baseball, even tennis.
Right.
They all have strong unions. They know they got to protect themselves, and they work together to make sure that happens.
So is anything like that happening in cricket? Are players starting to, band together and push back against these really tough schedules?
I think it's definitely gaining some traction. You see more players speaking out about it. And there are organizations like FICA, the Federation of International Cricketers Associations, that are trying to represent the players' interest.
Oh, okay. So that's good. It sounds like it's becoming less about just one guy complaining and more about a collective effort to address these problems?
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it takes. I mean, it's great when one player speaks out, but when they all come together, it sends a much stronger message.
Yeah.
And it gives them more power to actually change things.
Right, right. So it's about finding that balance, right? The ICC can't just ignore the money, but they also can't ignore the players who are, making the whole thing happen.
Exactly. And that's the tricky part.
Hmm.
Finding that sweet spot where cricket can keep growing and be successful, but without, burning out the players.
Yeah. I mean, Miller being willing to speak up about all this, even after having such a huge game, really shows you how important this is to the players. It's not just about him, it's about the future of cricket as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just reminds us that winning is great, but it shouldn't come at the cost of the players' well-being,
Yeah.
like their health, their careers.
For sure. This whole deep dive has really been eye-opening, just seeing how complicated it all is, the players, the tournament, the future of the game. There's no easy answers, but we got to keep talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And it needs to be a conversation that includes everyone, the players, the people running things, the TV people, the sponsors, and of course the fans.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we all want to see cricket thrive.
So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave you with this thought. What role do you think fans can play in all this? How can they help make things better for the players and the sport? It's something to think about as you keep enjoying the game.
That's a great question, and I think it's one that deserves a lot more attention. Because ultimately, the future of cricket is in all of our hands, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of international cricket. We'll catch you next time.